to your Daily 5 for Wednesday, September 25th, 2024. Logitech recently announced that they are going to be selling a pair of hardware devices that are collectively called the MX Creative Console, and that these devices are specifically designed to work with Adobe Photoshop and Premiere Pro, which, if you don't know what those are, Photoshop, of course, is probably one of the best-known photo imaging editor pieces of software out there, and Premiere Pro is Adobe's video editing platform, which I use. I use both of those on a regular basis, more so now that I've started to do video for the show on YouTube. So I'm very intimately familiar with how Premiere Pro has a lot of weird quirks to it, and so when I saw these two devices, initially I wrote it off. I thought, I don't know what the actual use for this would be. But the more I've read about it, I have to admit, the more that there is a compelling case for something like this. Because now, somebody will immediately, who works with these type of things, will say right away that you can do much of what's described with these devices with shortcut keys. You can build macros. There are lots of ways to do, to be fair, what these two devices are designed for without having to spend $200. That is absolutely true. You can get many different things that will do a lot of what these are saying that they're going to do. But they are also compelling for people who may want something that's a little bit more ease of use, that they can kind of configure. It has the visuals as far as the keys that are customizable. That dial pad, I played with a version of that I believe Microsoft made back for their Surface computer. Maybe it was Logitech that made it for the Surface. A dial like that at one of the Adobe Maxes I went to years ago, and it was a neat thing. I never ended up getting it because I could never afford a Surface computer, but the concept always struck me as a neat idea. The problem here, as many people are saying in comments and in general response to this announcement, is Logitech's track record of software is very uneven. I've recently run into this a few times. I actually ran into it really badly last year, I want to say, where Logitech updated, I don't remember which piece of software it is, but one of their basic, software control hub things, whatever they call it. I think it's called G Hub now. I think it had a different name at the time. But they updated something with it and it would never launch. It would get stuck in a launch loop forever. And the only real way around it was to downgrade the software about 3 versions. And I'm not saying it was entirely Logitech's fault. I have a feeling that it was a combination of Logitech's update as well as something in Windows that got updated. But nonetheless, what you saw and what you experienced was a problem with Logitech's specific software. And it took them, I want to say, 7 months to fix it. In that 7 months, though, if you want to do anything that required that software, which in some cases, some Logitech hardware does require that software to really manage it, you couldn't do it, or you'd have to do something. I literally think I got around it by doing an update to the device, which I believe was the mouse, on a Mac, that I was able to get it to take the settings and they carried over to Windows, I think. Or I found some other workaround. There was some way I got around this problem. But it remained a problem for a long time. And you can find many examples of this type of thing within any forums that talk about Logitech. Now, in fairness, many companies that make peripherals have these types of problems. It's not like my experience with the Razer Synapse software was any joyride either. But the reality is, if you're going to be spending money on stuff like this that is supposed to be giving you productivity gains, and the software is not something that you can really trust, then that's going to cause a confidence problem. I certainly would not buy these for at least the first 6 months that they're out. Let people, if you're even looking at this stuff, let somebody else with more disposable income buy it, and keep an eye on what the comments are about it in software and support forums. And if people come back and say, hey, it's working really well, note what that software version number is, get a downloadable version of it that you can keep somewhere just in case if you're going to buy this and they put out an update that then bricks it or stops it from working properly, at least you know what you can go back to when it was working. That's sadly something you should really do for most things now, where you can actually get a copy of a downloadable piece, a downloadable version of software or firmware, is keep a good working copy somewhere. Because the reality is, in a ever more connected and constantly updating environment, you really don't know when something's going to come along and destroy something that you've been relying on for a while. So the MX Creative Console looks interesting, and I do like Logitech's hardware most of the time. The problem is, I don't know that I could really rely on this software. And if you can't rely on the software more and more, that really means that you can't rely on the hardware either. Later.